Hello, world. This is Nick Jackson, and I'm here with Pastor Russell. Pastor Russell, say hello to the world.
Hello, world. Great to be here with you today on the One Word Wednesday podcast.
Now, hold on. Before we get into this, where do you work? Just so we know where you work. Where do you work?
Cool. I'm at Covenant First Presbyterian Church, downtown Cincinnati. And we are right in the heart of the city. And it's a pretty fantastic place to be.
And a beautiful place at that. With that being said, I got my word for you. So today, The word is forgiveness. When you hear the word forgiveness, what comes to your mind?
Oh, forgiveness is huge. Forgiveness is huge because it hits on so many levels. Okay, so I'm a pastor. We talk an awful lot about forgiveness and experiencing that inner forgiveness. Learning to release the gunk that we have inside, and the inner forgiveness that comes from connecting with God, with the Almighty. But of course, there's also the forgiveness with one another. There's the act of forgiveness that we do. And a lot of the work I have to do with people is helping them forgive somebody else, to let go of that hold on somebody else. And to a degree, the two are interconnected. The more you understand the forgivenness that you have received, the more you are able to extend that forgiveness to others. And so, that's kind of the big picture of forgiveness.
So I got to ask you this question, because forgiveness it's an old word. I've heard it most of my life, and really I have no idea actually how to do it. It sounds like you started to talk about exactly how you do it, but I know you walk people through this process. If you had a quick one hitter to tell us exactly what to do to walk us through this process, what would you say that is?
There is no quick, because you've got the emotion. Right? You've got to deal with the emotion, and depending upon the intensity of the wrong that you've suffered, you've got a lot to process through. So on a lot of things, there's no quick. It's just, what's the step you need to take today? What do you need to do today to release a little bit more? Because sometimes those emotions come back at the most inconvenient times. Sometimes that emotion comes back in the middle of the night, and you're tossing and you're turning, and you're like, I can't believe that guy. and there's nothing inherently wrong with the emotion. It's what do you do with it? And so for me, Jesus gives the instruction, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And so I've found that, I know, isn't that is heavy. And I found that is a challenge to me when I feel wronged by somebody else. The fastest way, first I have to just acknowledge the anger and the burn. And for me, I find that that's easiest to do in prayer. I acknowledge it to God. I shout at God, and better to shout at God than dump it on my wife or dump it on somebody else. Right. Mm-hmm. But then, finally getting to that place where I can pray for the other person, and not pray, God, I hope he gets it, but actually to pray, I don't know what's going on with them. I don't know what's best for them in their life, but I pray for blessing in their life, because the best thing that can happen for me is if someone receives the true spiritual blessing of transformation. Right. The Bible talks about the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control. The best thing for me is if the person that has done me wrong gets all that. Right. and so I just, a lot of times, I'm still stuck in that upsetness, and I can't even get to that point. And so it's just, okay, God, I'm going to just entrust this to you. Here's where I am, and honestly acknowledging where I am. And that I think is the key to forgiveness too, is the honest acknowledgement of internally where you are, because you can't release until you know what you are. You can't release it until you know what you're experiencing.
Right.
And And
Hold
so,
on, can
yeah.
I pause you right there? I got to ask
Yeah.
you a question. I got to ask you
Yeah.
an honest question. So I work with a lot of people throughout this city. A lot of people look like me, and a lot of people like me have a little bit of fear or frustration towards what we've seen online.
Mhm.
And matter of fact, people that may not look like me, right? When you have individuals that have police in their communities and they feel uncomfortable with that level of authority, right? Like how should we find a place to forgive the wrongs that have been done to us and be able to see this new instance as a new instance? How do we do that?
Wow, that is a heavy question, and that is, you know, I don't have the inner resources. I have to look at the folks who have done it. Yeah, so look at the folks who have come through the Rwandan genocide, for instance. There's a powerful story. Jean-Paul Samputu. Jean-Paul Samputu was a Rwandan music star, and he was rising high on the music scene in the 90s in Rwanda. And then this genocide, I mean, this ethnic tension between the Hutus and the Tutsis boiling up into genocide, over 1 million people killed. If you have, I mean, it's truly horrific. And his whole family wiped out by a guy in his village, like his dad, I shouldn't say his whole family. I think he had some siblings that survived, but his dad, a couple of his siblings, just killed by a guy he knew in his village. And after the genocide, Samputu had escaped to, I think, Uganda. And after the genocide, he just tanked, and he spent 9 or 10 years in a really, really bad place of dealing with anger, frustration, depression, drug use. He went to witch doctors. He did all this crazy stuff. And then, he came to a place where he was able to forgive. He had a spiritual encounter with God, and a pastor was working with him, and he came to a place where he could release and forgive. And he said, that he was able to be filled with joy once again. And that's when he was able to start making music again. But here was the key thing. He went to I guess after the genocide, the way the Rwandan government was trying to process this, they jailed and had arrested and jailed a lot of the perpetrators of the genocide. But in various villages, they had these truth and reconciliation gatherings. They had a specific word for them that I can't remember what it was, but it was basically much like the South African Truth and Reconciliation gathering.
Right.
But it was all based in the villages. And so the people in the villages, they gathered together. The folks would be brought in from the jail where they would tell their stories, and the people who lost would tell their stories. And it was just truth telling and storytelling. And Jean-Paul Samputu went back to his home village, and it was right there at the beginning of this gathering, hundreds of people in the room. He doesn't even know that the guy who killed his dad was there, and he stands up and he starts talking about forgiveness. And he says, if he were here, I would forgive him. I'd extend forgiveness. And the guy stands up and he says, really? I mean, how is that possible? And they come, they share stories, they embrace, and he forgives very publicly in that place. To me, that's an incredible tale, an incredible story. If I were in the same scenario, would I have the inner resources to do that? I don't know. I haven't been placed in that scenario.
Right.
I hope I would, but I haven't been there. But I can look to his example and the example of others. I mean, there are others who have come through, a level of suffering that I can't even grasp. And another great example, theologian Miroslav Volf. Miroslav Volf was a Croatian. So his whole family wiped out in the Balkan genocides back in the early 90s. And he had to wrestle with his whole understanding of forgiveness. He wrote a book about this called Exclusion and Embrace. And he talks about being able to recognize the humanity in the oppressor And the only way he's able to recognize the humanity in the oppressor is in recognizing his own humanity, his own propensity to need to be forgiven. It all loops back to that. I've done bad stuff. I need to be forgiven. I'm human. Recognize the humanity in the other. And when you recognize the humanity in the other, then that becomes a grounding for extending forgiveness. So I got to look to folks like that.
Right. I was just thinking, sorry not to cut you off on that. I was just thinking how hard it's been in my life to sometimes recognize my own humanity. Like recognize, being the guy in the crowd where someone's saying someone has done me wrong and I'm that guy that did them wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So not only how do we forgive, how do we receive forgiveness in this situation?
I mean, I think beginning to receive forgiveness begins with acknowledgement. It all begins with that self-examination, acknowledgement. And one of the things I've learned in my life, it has been that is an ongoing process. Penitence is not a one-time act. It's an ongoing discipline. It's a habit because I'm human. There's always something. And then I move along and I look back at things from 10 years ago. It's like, oh wow, I was really a jerk. oh wow, I can't believe. And and that leads you back to deeper penitence and deeper recognition, and hopefully a deeper place of openness to the person in front of you.
Man, I love this. I got to ask you one thing. If you have one message to share to the next generation, you have 1 minute. What is the one thing that you want them to know more than anything else?
I want them to know that God extends immense grace to you. Grace is something we don't earn. It is kindness and favor that is extended to us, and we didn't earn it. It's extended to us. God's love is abundant, and it's not just love that forgives. It's love that shapes us and sends us. It's love that has purpose for us. So it's saving, shaping, sending love, and that is all grace, something we didn't earn. It's a gift.
I love it. You know what? I want that grace. I want that grace myself.
Right on.
Hey, Speak Love family, I just want you to know we go to experts to find out these answers. Pastor Russell Smith is an expert in not only the knowledge, but he's also walking this path with you. Thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. Pastor, please say goodbye to everybody and tell them how they can connect with you.
All right, everybody, you can look for me at russellbsmith.com where I blog on faith and life, or you can come down to Covenant First Presbyterian and see us on Sundays, 10:30.
All right. Thank you
so much, Nick.
Speak Love.